What's happening, everybody? It is the third Saturday in October. That means we are previewing the biggest SEC game of the week. That's Alabama versus Tennessee. Jalen Milroe versus Joe Milton. Who can lead his team to a monster victory? Locked On SEC crossover edition starts now.
You are Locked On SEC, your daily podcast on the Southeastern Conference. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's happening, everybody? Welcome into Locked On SEC. It's great to have you guys along. This episode presented to you by PrizePicks. Go to prizepicks.com/LockedOnCollege. Use our promo code LockedOnCollege. That'll get you your first deposit match up to $100 daily. Fantasy sports made easy over at PrizePicks. I'm Chris Gordy, host of Locked On SEC. Joining me for the crossover today is Eric Kane, host of Locked On Vols, and Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama. A monster matchup this week. Gentlemen, how are you?
Doing well. Excited for the third Saturday in October, for sure.
Happiest actually on the third Saturday in October.
Yeah, sometimes we don't get it right sometimes, but it is fun how this falls. And of course, this is one of the biggest games between, an SEC East and SEC West team. In the grand scheme of things, normally this game doesn't mean a whole heck of a lot in the standings on who's going to go to Atlanta. But this year with Bama already having a non-conference loss, we'll see what falls here over these next couple weeks. Obviously, Tennessee's got the in-conference loss to an East foe in Florida already, but plenty to play for, plenty on the line. Let's start with you, Eric, as we start kind of these things all the time. What's the biggest storyline for Tennessee, you think, coming into this week?
Yeah, it's been a couple of different things. I mean, Tennessee's defense has taken a massive step and had a great showing against A&M, so the defense is a storyline for sure, getting after the quarterback. The run game, I mean, what it did against A&M, what teams, Alabama included, couldn't do against A&M, what Tennessee did do on the ground against A&M was pretty impressive last week, and Jalen Wright's definitely a storyline. But, I mean, honestly, it's the most important position in all of sports. It's the most popular and most important. So the main storyline for Tennessee, even coming off a big win at home that you needed, is the quarterback play in Joe Milton and how it needs to be better for Tennessee to win a game like this on the road and certainly win some of those big games on the schedule, Georgia and some more, down the line. So I think the biggest storyline is, obviously you got the win. You're in a good spot. You certainly have a chance in this football game, but you need your quarterback to pick up a little bit of slack in Joe Milton.
Luke, for Alabama, what's the biggest storyline in your mind this week?
Yeah, I mean, he sort of stole my thunder. I mean, the quarterback is the most important position in all of sports, if you ask me. And I think it's going to come down to that. Look, these two quarterbacks are kind of similar. I mean, big arms, very athletic, mobile enough. In fact, I think maybe Milroe's a little bit more mobile overall and maybe a little faster, but both have some accuracy issues at times. They have this close to the same number of interceptions, close to the same number of touchdowns. Milroe, oddly, has actually thrown for more yards. I know that the nation probably doesn't feel that way, but it's true. And he's played one fewer game. But the biggest difference is Milroe's been sacked, I believe it's 26 times, and Milton's only been sacked 8 times. And now that's a reflection on the offensive line as well as the quarterback. But that's something that's got to change for this. So, I mean, I think if you're talking about two keys for Alabama, it's going to be offensive line improvement somehow, some way against a team like Tennessee that is very good at rushing the passer. And also Milroe, who's been growing game by game, maybe not at the pace everybody wants him to grow, but he's been growing game by game while his floor has remained about the same. He's got to know to throw the ball away a little bit more this time instead of taking sacks and costing Alabama yardage.
Guys, before we get into more of the elements on this matchup and, the key matchups we're going to be looking at, Eric, kind of assess Tennessee on what you've seen throughout them through the first few weeks of this season, because it is kind of funny. We talked about preseason what we thought Alabama would be, and we said, going to be strong defensively and dominant run game. It's kind of what Tennessee has become. It's strong defensively and dominant run game, and not so much, Joe Milton being the second coming of Hendon Hooker.
You're exactly right, Chris. And Luke, I couldn't agree more. I might do on my Friday show just a segment solely just on Milton versus Milroe because I think they're so similar. I've been super surprised by Milroe this year, and more on that later on. But Chris, to answer your point or to answer your question, yeah, I mean, I thought a lot of us thought that Tennessee's defense would take a step, and it certainly has taken a step. That step has come from the defensive line. The step has come from the edges, getting after the passer. And when you can consistently get after the passer and you don't have to bring pressure from the second, third layer, then that's going to make your secondary a whole lot better. I mean, look at Kamal Haddon. All right, he's made some boneheaded plays in a Tennessee uniform. He's playing elite cover corner right now, number 5 on one side of the field. Gabe Judy-Lawley on the other side, former Vanderbilt, former BYU cornerback. Got to love the transfer portal era, right? He's playing really good. You know, Denico Slaughter's a cornerback. He's working his way back. Those safeties are playing okay. So Tennessee's secondary, which has always been a huge question mark, is playing pretty good football right now because of that front four. It's all tied together. So the defense is taking a step. The run game, I thought coming into the year that Tennessee would have one of the deepest running back rooms in the SEC. I didn't know if it would be the best, but I knew it would be good, and it's been really good. Jalen Wright's taken that step, and he's averaging 7.2 yards per carry. You feel really good about him, and you feel good about your number 2 option, Jabari Small, and then your home run hitter who kind of comes in and spells both of those guys. You throw him the football, had 4 touchdowns against Virginia. That's Dylan Sampson, so Tennessee feels really good about running the football and all that. So, been really surprised with that type of stuff. Again, going back to the quarterback, thought that there would be some more explosive plays down the field. Now, you knew Joe Milton was not Hendon Hooker. You knew you didn't have Jalen Hyatt. You knew you didn't have Cedric Tillman. Now you've lost Brew McCoy. So you knew it wasn't going to be what it was. But I still think the lack of explosive plays down the field, 20-plus yards, Milton's one of the worst quarterbacks in the country in those statistics. So I think that's been the surprising thing. But it's been good to see the run game, which I thought would be there. It's really good to see the defense, which is impressed me more than what I thought it'd be at this point.
Luke, as we look at Bama, I'm a little shocked to see, they're around, 8th or 9th in the conference in rushing yards per game. I thought they'd be more dominant running the ball, and all the criticism that comes with Milton, of course, post the loss to Tennessee. Look, the crazy thing is Alabama's playing close games, but they're getting the job done, Luke. When they need a big play made, they're finding that big play to secure victory against Ole Miss, against A&M, and then, of course, this past week against Arkansas. Alabama fans may not like it, but the team is still finding ways to win, and that's what's most important.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, we don't like it for the most part. I mean, there's a contingent of Alabama fans going, hey, don't ever look a win horse in the mouth. I know I sort of botched that old saying, but you know where I'm trying to go.
It's like a gnat. It's like a gnat on a mule's ass, right?
Well, he said a gnat on a fly's ass. I was like, that is one small gnat. But anyway, look, they are still winning, and they are getting better. Again, not at the pace everybody wants them to, and everybody's so used to Alabama slapping teams around that it is sort of foreign territory. We're not really sure how to react. I can't wait to go to this game and see what the crowd's going to be like. Alabama crowds can notoriously be sort of golf clappy, but in a big game, they'll get after it as much as anybody. But so I'm hoping that Alabama fans are really into this one at this particular game. But yeah, they are still winning. That's a positive. But boy, it doesn't feel like Alabama of old. Every now and again, you'll see a flash. But, I go back to Milroe for a second, and it's so weird. His best plays have been when the snaps have been awful, it seems like. He picks up a snap that's a worm burner, and then he's able to throw a deep ball to Kobe Prentice or something. And, some of Alabama's biggest plays have been because of busted coverages. That's what I think is frustrating. It's great to have long touchdown plays. That's awesome. And 80% of Milroe's touchdowns have been over 20 yards. That's incredible. But it seems like most of them are due to busted coverages. And so you would like it to be more because of scheme. Everybody's still learning. Tommy Rees is still learning. They're trying to get through this thing. And, right now it's a very NCAA tournament mentality, I think, for Alabama, survive and advance. And then hopefully if Alabama is able to maneuver their way through the rest of the schedule, which I think they can, because they do get their toughest games at home, Auburn notwithstanding, we all know Auburn, Jordan-Hare Stadium is built on an Indian burial ground made of fallen UFOs. So weird things happen there. But if they can make it to Georgia in the SEC championship game, then, hey, maybe by then they've improved enough to at least give them a fight.
Yeah, it feels like Milroe makes his best throws when he gets murdered back there. He gets hit, and then he just delivers like an absolute strike. It's been weird this year. All right, we'll get to more with Eric and Luke here in just a second. Key matchups coming your way in just a second right here on Locked On SEC Crossover Edition. First, I want to remind you guys, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at PrizePicks. Look, PrizePicks is the largest independently owned daily fantasy sports platform in North America. The easiest and most exciting way to play daily fantasy sports, it's just you against the numbers. It's that simple. Instead of battling thousands of other players, including pros and sharks, you pick more than or less than on 2 to 6 player stat projections, and you watch the winnings roll in. PrizePicks is really simple to play. You can make picks and submit your entry in less than 60 seconds. Test your skills out throughout this football season in the most exciting way possible. If you have the skills, you could turn $10 into $250 with just a few taps. Quick withdrawals, easy gameplay, and an enormous selection of players and stat types. That's what makes PrizePicks the #1 daily fantasy sports app. Go to prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use our promo code LOCKEDONCollege for a first deposit match up to $100. Again, that's prizepicks.com/lockedoncollege. Use promo code LOCKEDONCollege. And again, that first deposit match up to $100. It is PrizePicks. It is daily fantasy sports made easy. All right, jumping back into it, guys, as we do our crossover edition for the SEC game of the week, previewing Tennessee at Alabama. We got Eric Kane, the host of Locked On Vols, Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama. And guys, let's dive into key matchups in this one. And this could be whatever you want. It could be the Alabama DBs covering Tennessee wide receivers. It could be the Tennessee front four trying to get pressure on that Bama O-line, which has been good, not great. We'll start with you, Eric. Let's start with what you think the key matchup is to watch for in this matchup.
Well, I think the key matchup for Tennessee, no matter what, is you've got to run the football. Okay, you've always been a good running football team under Josh Heupel. The biggest misconception of all of college football is that Tennessee doesn't run the football, where Tennessee led the nation in rushing touchdowns a season ago and has averaged 200 yards a game under Josh Heupel. Anyway, but that is, I mean, it's always been good. So far it's been great this year. You got to run the football. And Alabama, as always, is stout against the run. That defense is good. That front, I mean, really top to bottom, that defense is really, really solid, only allowing a little over 100 yards on the ground so far. So it's going to be tough, but you've got to run the football. You got to get Joe Milton in situations where you're 2nd and 2, take some shots, where you're 3rd and manageable, 3rd and 4, 3rd and 5, 3rd and 3. You can't play behind the sticks, and that goes into another element, and dealing with the crowd noise, because Tennessee hasn't done that at a good job. But you've got to run the football, do what you do best, and run the football. And then secondly, obviously, if you're continuing on that offensive side, I mean, Joe Milton's going to have to complete some balls down the field. Joe Milton's going to have to pass for more than 100 yards. He's going to have to complete more than 50% of his passes. And Alabama's got a pretty stout secondary. So when you're looking and you're stacking, Tennessee O-line, Alabama D-line, Alabama front seven, Tennessee, offensive skill, pretty close in terms of who might have the edge. Alabama certainly has the edge in its secondary against Tennessee's passing attack. Tennessee's just got to make enough plays to where you're not one-dimensional, and you can make some third down throws. So Tennessee's got to run the football for sure. Then obviously Joe Milton doesn't have to be Superman, but you've got to be better. I mean, you've got to be better certainly than what you were last week. You can't be turning the football over like you've done in SEC play. Go back to being who you were at the beginning of the season, where you weren't being spectacular, but you weren't turning the football over, and you were getting about 225 yards a game. You get that Joe Milton on the road and this run game behind you, I mean, that's pretty good performance in my opinion.
Luke, as we talk from the Alabama side, what's the key matchup you're watching for?
I mean, I think the easy answer is offensive line for Alabama versus defensive line for Tennessee, because, man, they do get after the passer, and they're great at sacks, and Alabama's terrible at protecting the quarterback this year. I mean, just calling a spade a spade. I hate to say that, but that's just the way it is. James Pierce is fantastic, and you feel like he was the guy that's the star of the defense. But in the end, I mean, it may be Aaron Beasley for Tennessee. The linebacker is 8.5 tackles for loss, a couple of sacks. I mean, these guys are really good. And Alabama's just so green on the offensive line. But I think the other key thing is going to be special teams. Look, Will Reichert hadn't missed a kick since he missed the kick against Tennessee. And, I mean, that's got to stick in his craw a little bit. You look, there are a million things I can say about that. Like why in the world we weren't running the ball to try to get it a little bit closer for him. Don't make me go into that again, please. I gotta get serenity now. But I think every drive needs to end in a kick for Alabama, whether it's an extra point, field goal attempt, or punt. Don't turn the ball over. And on the other side, get ahead early. And that's so cliche. I mean, of course, everybody wants to get ahead early, but I think it's really important. You go back and look at how Florida took a 26-7 lead at the half or something like that. And then you make Joe Milton have to pass. And again, he can pass. He can throw it over their mountains. I mean, he can throw it a gazillion yards. The problem is sometimes it doesn't go where he wants it to go or anybody wants it to go. And if you can force him to some bad passes, get some turnovers, and get ahead, I think that's going to be one of the key matchups.
Yeah, it's going to be very interesting to watch a couple of these things from different angles. I think, we can kind of agree wide receiver, maybe still not, fully impressed with wide receiving core on both sides of the ball here for both sides. But I did want to get your thought real quick, Eric, on what do you think about, we haven't seen Joe Milton run a ton this year. Obviously, we saw he had a monster run a couple of weeks ago to start off a game, but Joe Milton running ability, is that something maybe plays a bigger factor this week?
Yeah, I think Luke said it earlier. Both of these quarterbacks can run, but if I'm a defender, if I'm a middle linebacker, Jalen Milroe scares me so much more on the ground than Joe Milton does because Alabama's run him before and he's good in that regard. Joe Milton, I believe, can be effective in that regard. He just doesn't want to run. He wants to throw the football. And Tennessee's called a couple of design runs for him. It's been successful. He kept that zone read to begin the UTSA game, went 80 yards. That looked good. Last week, he kept a speed option and made the right read and, got a first down. He took out a couple of A&M defenders by running over them and kind of got the juices flowing and kind of got some momentum and some confidence building. So I think that's big for Joe Milton. And I think that needs to be an area where Tennessee kind of leans into. I mean, don't call 5 to 6 design runs for Joe Milton. Call 2 or 3. And then, when things aren't open downfield, just take off and go because you are 235 pounds. You're a load. So, we'll see. He's not the fastest. He's fast enough. That needs to be an area of his game to where he can help Tennessee out a little bit because, again, like last game, just an example of the A&M game. I mean, Tennessee just couldn't do anything through the air whatsoever. So you gotta continue to add some elements to make up for that missing yardage. And I think Joe Milton has the ability to do that. But Jalen Milroe, much more effective, much more dangerous on the ground than Joe Milton, but Joe Milton can get his own, in my opinion, and Tennessee needs to lean into that.
Luke, when we talk about Alabama defensively, they've been much more stout here the last few weeks, really since that South Florida game. After the loss to Texas, they've really turned it on, and we've seen pressure up front. Dallas Turner leads the SEC in sacks, and when we talk about teams as team sacks, number 2 and number 3, Tennessee and Alabama. So both these teams are getting after it and getting pressure. But to me, this game is going to be more about timely sacks, right? Like the big sacks on third down to make you punt. Sacks on first down are great, but teams can still convert. It's those big timely sacks that are going to be important this week.
Yeah, there's no doubt about it. And look, Alabama's pass rush has definitely kicked it up a notch. Chris Braswell has been fantastic. Tim Keenan has been a monster on the interior. He's really Justin Aboigbe really getting after it. I mean, the defense has really been incredible, considering that the offense doesn't help out quite as much. I think in past Alabama defenses, while they had more talent than this defense, but they knew they could be as aggressive as they want to be because on offense, Alabama was going to score too. So even if they gave up something, the offense behind Tua or Mac Jones or Bryce Young was probably going to score. And I think this defense is finally coming into its own. Dallas Turner, I could make a case for him not only being SEC Defensive Player of the Year, but National Defensive Player of the Year. And Deontay Lawson's going to be key in this game. So Kool-Aid and Terrion Arnold. Terrion Arnold was actually just named an All-American at the midseason point by ESPN. Kool-Aid was named an All-American at the midseason point by CBS. So both of them are playing very, very well right now. But the key is going to be stopping the run game. I mean, Tennessee's run game is very strong. And if they can stop that, I think they can force Tennessee into some turnovers. Caleb Downs has been fantastic as a freshman back there. I think in the end, he could be SEC Freshman of the Year. He's growing so much and so quickly. Has a couple of interceptions now on the year. So I feel like that's going to be the biggest thing, is trying to force Tennessee to play from behind.
Yeah, it's so interesting when you talk about Alabama's offense. I couldn't believe when I was looking at the number. Alabama has scored 26 points or less in 4 of their last 5 games. We're so used to Bama scored in the 30s and 40s and even 50s under Bryce Young, and to see this offense come way back down to earth. We'll get into the numbers here, guys, but that over-under number I think is about around 49. Low scoring game this week. We'll get to that in just a second. Thank you guys so much for making us your first listen every day. We'll get to score predictions coming up next. But first, I want to remind you guys, this episode is presented to you by our friends over at the Jase case. Look, Jase Medical is doing their part to help you guys get ready for the unexpected. There's a lot of uncertainty in the world today, and it's important for you to be prepared from hurricanes, earthquakes, unrest in the Middle East, tons of stuff going on. And, things like that can always lead to supply chain shortages for medications or the inability to get medications in a timely manner. And the Jase case is a personalized emergency medication kit that contains 5 essential antibiotics that treat the most common and deadly bacterial infections. You can also customize your case and add additional life-saving medications based on whatever your unique needs are. Go check them out, please, and make a right decision for your family over at jasemedical.com. That's JASE medical.com. Enter our promo code LOCKEDON at checkout. That will get you a $20 discount on your order. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON at jasemedical.com, JASE. And you can also buy a gift card for family or your loved ones so they can get a Jase case of their very own. Again, holiday season coming up very soon. So, look, go take care of business and make sure you are prepared for the unexpected with the Jase case at jasemedical.com. That's promo code Locked On. Go check them out today. All right, guys, as we dive back into it here on Locked On crossover edition, Locked On SEC, talking the SEC game of the week with Eric Kane of Locked On Vols and Luke Robinson, host of Locked On Bama. And guys, time for the moment of truth. Let's get into how you see this one playing out. What are you watching for? And ultimately, we'll get a score prediction. Eric, how do you see this one playing out?
Yeah, man, I think we're dialing back the clocks here. I think we're playing defense. I think we're running the football. Man, it's going to be, in my opinion, and watch him go score 50 plus again, but it's going to be the complete opposite of what last year was, 52-49, the fireworks and everything. So, defensive stops, a couple turnovers, can special teams be a factor? Tennessee had a special team score last week. You'd love for that to happen again if you're Tennessee, especially to help out an offense that didn't score an awful lot. So it's going to be that type of game. I think Tennessee's going to run the football. Now, I said this going into the A&M game. I was like, I have confidence Tennessee will run the football. I don't know if Tennessee will run for its average of like 230 or whatever. And lo and behold, Tennessee ran for 232 yards. I don't think Tennessee will run for 230 against Alabama, but I think Tennessee will run for a decent amount. I think it's just going to come down to, can Joe Milton make some throws on third down? And can Joe Milton, hit a couple down the field to kind of change this game wide open? There's been, shoulda, coulda, wouldas, right? I say it all the time on Locked On Vols. There's a couple of throws every single game to where, the wide receiver drops it, or there's not a defensive pass interference called, or whatever the case may be, that if that ball was completed, it changes the game completely. But that's football, right? That happens every single week. So you got to connect on some of those. I think Tennessee's pass rush will be a factor. I don't know, man. I've never been characterized as a homer. Never. As my viewers on Locked On Vols. For some reason, I've just been feeling Tennessee this week, and I understand that's going on the road somewhere you haven't played well at Florida, didn't play well in Athens, got blown out in South Carolina. Tennessee's not been a good road team here lately, but there's something about this matchup. The more I've looked into it all week long, I've just felt like Tennessee can win. Not only can win this, but will win this, especially if Joe Milton plays a little bit better. So I'll reserve the right to change this tomorrow on my show. Or on Friday. I'm saying this right now. Give me Tennessee 27-24 in a low-scoring defensive rock fight.
27-24. I like it. I think that does hit the over though on that one. So it's 49 is where we're sitting right now at FanDuel. Luke, how do you see this one playing out? What are you watching for? And score prediction?
The old adage that Jimmy and I say all the time is a team will play its best game a couple times a year, its worst game a couple times a year, and everything else in between is what you actually are. I'm looking for Alabama to play one of its best games this weekend because I don't think they've done it yet. They hadn't put together two complete halves at all. And I feel like they can do that this week. I can't get the Tennessee-Florida game out of my head. Tennessee just didn't play well. They didn't handle the road very well at all. Eric's already brought that up. And that's the only road game they've been on this year. I mean, I guess they played in Nashville against Virginia, but they're leaving the friendly confines of Knoxville. And they're going to be playing in Tuscaloosa. I think the crowd will be ready. I think they will be rowdy. The Alabama fans are ready to explode. I mean, they want to see this team put it together because it feels like it's been a minute since Alabama's really put it together. Like last year, even with Bryce Young, who I could make the argument is the best player in Alabama history, he couldn't work the magic and get everything going. There was just too much disjointedness, if that's a word. But I'm going to pick Alabama to win. I'm going to also go more throwback. I'm going to go 19-14, which is the score from, I think, 2015 when Derrick Henry had to score late. I think it's going to be tight. I know I've said I think Alabama's going to play one of his best games, and then I say they only get 19 points. But I feel like they're going to be a well-earned 19 points because I feel like this Tennessee defense is very good. And Tennessee's going to run the ball more, and the new rules, I think the clock's going to run a lot more. So I don't think there'll be quite as many points scored. And look, let's face it. I mean, Alabama can be quick strike. They just aren't necessarily usually quick strike. So I feel like Jalen Milroe may run the ball a little bit more. Look, he can run the ball. Everybody's got that Arkansas game last year in their head. That long run he had on, I think, 3rd and 15 or something, where he just was blazing down the field. And everybody goes, oh, my God, this guy is such a great runner. He really hadn't done much of that this year. He scored on a long run against Middle Tennessee State, and he scored on a 53-yarder, I think, against Mississippi State. Other than that, he's like Joe Milton, like Eric was talking about. He's a little tentative to run, I think, because he wants to pass so badly. But hopefully Alabama can talk him into this week saying, Bud, you got to be you. And if the running lane is there, take it. I just think that's the way it's going to be. And let me throw one more caveat in there that, I think the coaching staff has shown a lot more confidence in Milroe in the sense that last week against Arkansas, Alabama had a big lead. Then they sort of went to sleep. Arkansas comes back, and Alabama's got the ball late. You think they're just going to keep running the ball, try and run as much clock as possible, force Arkansas into their timeouts. And the coaching staff trusted him to make a pass. And he got nailed, but he did make the pass. It wasn't perfect, but Knobloch went up and got it, gives him a first down, basically seals the game. And I think little things like that help you grow even more as a quarterback. You're like, okay, they trust me. And now you can be more of yourself instead of trying to force yourself to be something else. So I'm going to go out 19-14 and, just hope Alabama comes out on top. I'll take a 1-point win. I don't care about the cover.
So Eric went 27-24. You were 19-14, Luke, for the win. I don't know why I saw, like a close game and Tennessee setting up for the game-winning field goal, and like Jaheim Otis comes up and blocks it, Terrence Cody style. I don't know why that went through my head.
I'll take it.
I'm going to go 23-20 Alabama. Again, this being at home, if it was in Knoxville, I would take the Vols. I think two very evenly matched teams in a lot of different categories. It's just that edge. Bama doesn't lose in Tuscaloosa very often. They've already lost one this year. The odds of them losing another home game, well, they get LSU in 2 weeks too. So one of these games, can Alabama survive both Tennessee and LSU in back-to-back games? Going to be tough, but we'll see. But I'm going to defer to the home team. I did think earlier this week I was leaning more like 30-13 Alabama. I was leaning heavily that way, but I've come back down to Tennessee, and I think this one's close. But I think we can agree, guys, on all three of our predictions. Hammer Bama plus or Tennessee plus the 9, right?
Yeah, I think so for sure. I do have one more question for Luke, Chris, and I'll be quick. I know we got to get out of here if that's cool. Luke, how do you think Alabama handled the tempo each of the past 2 years? I'll say this: Tennessee's not as fast as they've been the last 2 years. They're still gonna go tempo, but with Joe Milton, especially on the road, you got your center back in Cooper Mays, which is huge. But on the road, Tennessee slows it down because, again, they got to try to communicate and do all that type of stuff. But still, it's going to be the faster tempo than you've seen all year if you're Alabama. How does Alabama, in your opinion, the last 2 years kind of handle that tempo from Tennessee?
Pete Golding the former defensive coordinator. I feel like, that's been part of the problem. Look, I'm not throwing Pete Golding completely under the bus. There are a lot of Alabama fans that just think he's the devil incarnate. I don't, but I also don't think he was great for Alabama. I think that it just wasn't a great marriage. And now Alabama's got a defensive coordinator in Kevin Steele that's much more aggressive. And I feel like if Kevin Steele had been the defensive coordinator for Alabama the last 2 years, some of those losses wouldn't have been losses. And that's just my personal belief. Again, not trying to blame it all on Pete Golding, but that's just the way I think. And how will they handle the tempo? I think they'll be fine. I mean, look, tempo is sort of something you deal with most everybody now. I mean, it's not complete. Yes, Tennessee is faster than most. Now, they're not as fast as they have been, just as you pointed out. But I think tempo is one of those things that everybody's sort of gotten in the groove with now. I mean, Oregon gets beat sometimes and they do tempo. I mean, it's just, and they've got a lot of talent. It's just one of those things you got to deal with. You don't have to, I'd be more scared if I was facing the wishbone. Nobody faces that anymore. So, I think they'll handle it okay. And Alabama's defense is really turning a corner. So I feel like whatever gets thrown at them, I'm very confident in. Whatever gets thrown at Will Reichert, I'm very confident in. I'm very, very, very nervous about the offensive line giving up 5 sacks, which is about what they do every game.
Yeah. Either way, guys, one thing will be for sure. Somebody will be smoking cigars on the field at the end of this one, whether it's Alabama or Tennessee. Going to be a great one. It's the SEC game of the week.
One more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
Chris, we will not throw our goalpost in the river.
Yeah. Still can't find Tennessee, so yeah.
Yeah. Look, Alabama, we've seen a lot of schools this season rush the field, and we've scratched our head going, why are they rushing the field? Don't rush the field, Bama, if you win this one. It just you should elevate yourself to a higher standard than rushing the field.
Tennessee last year, I mean, it'd been 15 damn years. Like,
I'm not discrediting Tennessee. I'm just saying, like, when a Clemson or I don't know, whoever this year beats somebody who's like, unranked or like a 20th ranked team and you rush the field.
I hear you, like, for sure. Now, the embarrassing part of that whole situation was Tennessee's athletic director, who was so good at his job. He's such a good, moneymaker. He puts out a GoFundMe after that saying, hey, we need a goalpost for this weekend. We got a home game. Come on, dude. Anyway.
Yeah, that's
Chris.
That's lame.
In the show, man. It's going to be a good one. It's going to be a good one.
Raise the standard across the SEC. Less rushing the field, all right? Yes. We can admit it was a great ball game. Let's turn around and go home, and we don't need to rush the field. But anyway, going to be a heck of a game, third Saturday in October. Going to be a good one. For Eric Kane, Locked on Vols, Luke Robinson, Locked on Bama. I'm Chris Gordy, Locked on SEC. This has been a Bama Vol SEC crossover edition of Locked On, and want you guys to keep it locked right here on the Locked On College channel. Every Friday we'll have the Locked On College preview, breaking down the whole world of college football. That's coming your way on Friday. We'll talk to you guys tomorrow right here on Locked On SEC, Locked On Vols, and Locked On Bama.